Bismarck Insights with Mayor Mike Schmitz, a transparent and engaging conversational dive into meaningful topics impacting local government in Bismarck, North Dakota. Bismarck Insights is dedicated to removing barriers between the city of Bismarck and the citizens we serve every day.
Hello and welcome to Bismarck Insights. I'm Bismarck Mayor Mike Schmitz, and today I have Josh Askvig with me from AARP. Josh, to get started, I always ask everybody, give a little background. I mean, I know who you are, but
Sure.
Not everybody does.
Sure.
And what led you to AARP as the state director?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's good to be with you, Mayor, and be back in front of a camera on public access again for a while. So for those who don't know, I grew up in Minot, North Dakota, lived in North Dakota most of my life, been in Bismarck since 2006. To speed a long story up, spent some time on the City Commission,
Yep.
Spent 8 years on the City Commission from 2010 to 2018. Did that during that time I worked first for the North Dakota Education Association, what's now known as North Dakota United, and then I started at AARP in 2011, so 2011, so I've been there for 14 years.
Wow.
And kind of what got me here is a couple of things. One, my background is in campaigns, elections, policy making. That's what I went to school for and what I got trained in. But it's also something that I was just raised on. I'm a North Dakota Boys State alum. I went to American Legion Boys Nation, and so understanding that's how our democratic form of government works is being participatory, and so making sure you're in the policy arena is something I wanted to do. When I worked for NDA, I spent a lot of time on retirement issues, and so we had a lot of overlap with AARP, and got to know the AARP team, and eventually jumped over there in 2011, did their advocacy work for 5 years approximately, and then when my predecessor retired, was elevated to the role of state director, and it's a job I love and work with a great team right here in North Dakota.
Let's talk about what the advocacy work is.
Sure.
I mean, AARP is for those of us who have matured, I would say, right? I don't want to call anybody old because I don't think, I think old is your mind.
Yeah.
So, but what is the work that you specifically are doing to help those individuals who have reached and attained a certain age?
Yeah, and I'm going to take half a step back because I think your description about AARP, just to make sure folks understand, AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan, membership-based organization. We've got offices all 50 states, D.C., Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. So our work as a state office, often people think of AARP, and when I talk to people who don't know the work we do, they say, oh, you're in insurance. And it's like, no, those are the member benefits products that we endorse, and we as a state office don't have anything to do with that. We really have a core mission.
And thank you for bringing that up, because I wasn't even going down that path.
But I think it's important for folks to understand when they think of AARP, we as a state office have a core mission. We do advocacy for people 50 and older. We do community education and outreach for those 50 and older, and then we promote community volunteerism and engagement through us, with us, or just in their community in general. And so in the advocacy space, what drew me to AARP, and it was the advocacy work. My predecessor, Janice Chaney, when I started at AARP, told me, Josh, you only get old if you're lucky. So you might as well be engaged, and what does that look like? As you age, what does that look like? And how do we build, communities that ensure everybody, regardless of your 8 or 80 or in between, can participate and be a part of the community that you want to be a part? How do we make sure we have public policies that support aging? Yes, North Dakota may have gotten younger over the last few years, but we still have large segments of our population that are aging in the demographic curve. And one thing I know in policymaking, you can't outrun demographics as much as you try. And the demographic curves shows North Dakota's continuing to age. And so how are we working in communities like Bismarck, Fargo, across North Dakota, but across the state of North Dakota, at making sure we build communities that understand we're aging and built. Often our communities were built with 1970s models.
Yes.
And that doesn't work in today's day and age. And so how do we do it to ensure that everybody gets inclusive? I know one of the things I think you asked me about was kind of our mission and what it is. I mean, every day I wake up, how do we empower people to choose how they live as they age? How do we empower folks to make decisions? Because decisions for you and your family, Mayor, as you age are different than me and my family as we age.
So what particular topics then in let's just take the last 12 months or even what you're maybe working on trying to to help guide not only the individuals who you represent, so to speak, but those of us who are in policy-making positions, so we can achieve some of that.
Yeah, I think a couple of things that jump off, and you know this, but for our viewers, the first and foremost is we spend a lot of time talking about Social Security. And we don't talk about Social Security just because older adults rely on it. Everybody who's working is paying into Social Security.
Yes.
In one way, shape, or form. And so how do we ensure that Social Security continues to stay strong for current beneficiaries, those near retirement, but also future generations? I'm not as close to Social Security age as some people might think I would be, but I want to make sure it's solvent and there and guarantees the benefits for me and future generations. And I know, one of the things we worked with you and the commission on is it was 90-year anniversary of Social Security this year.
Yes.
You guys passed a resolution recognizing the importance of the economic impact, not just the individual impact, but the economic impact it has in terms of those dollars rolling to individuals who spend them in their communities. So that's one that we spend a lot of time on. The second area is on fraud prevention. Older adults often have access to more liquid assets and cash, and so they're often targeted at a higher propensity than younger adults. Yep. Both categories are targeted for scams and fraud, but often older adults are preyed upon by criminals, and so
I think they tend to be a bit more vulnerable at times.
They can be,
because they may not be as aware of what all this current technology is.
Sure.
And unfortunately, as we age, sometimes our ability to quickly think or react, I think, diminishes. And so, that's so. What are you trying to do to help educate?
Well, a couple of things on the fraud space. We have trained volunteers who go out and do community presentations on this. We've done 80 presentations off of a number of topics this year across North Dakota, a number of them right here in Bismarck and Mandan. About 60% of those presentations are fraud prevention related. I want to make sure I say fraud prevention, not fraud, but trying to help arm folks. What are the red flags to look out for? What are the things that people should be keeping an eye on? If you're helping care for an older loved one, what are things you should be looking out for to observe and see? Is somebody trying to take advantage of them or scam them or defraud them? And so we spend a lot of time on that. We've pushed for public policy at the state level. We just passed a cryptocurrency kiosk regulatory bill. We were the second state in the country that put some regulations around these cryptocurrency kiosks that have popped up and are showing up around the state of North Dakota. And so we really have been working to ensure that as that law now gets implemented and goes into effect, how are we protecting consumers around that? We've previously worked on scam advocacy related to setting up a victim restitution fund. So if somebody is a victim of investment fraud, the North Dakota Insurance and Securities Department now, they combined, I gotta get that through my head, has a small pool of funds that they can't necessarily get people whole, but they can help them get back up on their feet if they were a victim of that and there wasn't any funding available for the restitution. So there's a whole menu of things we've gone through. And then last but certainly not least, I think it's sharing resources, sharing timely information. I talked a little bit about cryptocurrency scams. It started out as cash being mailed. Then it turned to wire transfers. Then it turned to gift cards. Now it's cryptocurrency, and starting to look at what's the next thing that scammers are going to try and rely on.
Yep, and I know it's happening all across those, but I'm well aware of a family member who was nearly scammed on more of a currency-related item where they said, "Hey, you need to go open up an account here, transfer money here." Yeah. And fortunately, the retailer in this case, who was going to be the target to open up the account, said, "Stop.
Yeah,
that smells like a scam."
Yeah.
And it was right.
Yeah, and if you're being asked to make a payment via cryptocurrency to somebody you don't know, or via gift card or wire transfer to somebody you don't know, it's almost certainly a scam. So stop, take a minute, breathe. These folks are criminals. We call them criminals. They're really good at trying to get you into a heightened state of vulnerability and making decisions quickly without getting a chance to think about it. And so I encourage you to take that pause, reflect, and then protect yourself.
Whether it's through your cell phone or an email.
Absolutely.
I think those are probably the commonalities because those are the easy access points. And certainly for those individuals who are more aged. I think there probably are other ways they're accessing those individuals who know how to use Instagram and TikTok or whatever. I don't understand those, but
Mayor, you'll be happy to know I had my own daughter teach me how to put a new background on my phone the other day. I got a new phone, and she's like, "Dad, hand it over."
So you already kind of explained what drew you to AARP, so we don't need to go back to that. But I know one of the things that AARP is very concerned about is within our communities, how do we make sure that they're livable?
Yeah.
So what is it that you see from your side of the street, so to speak, that maybe we're missing, or we probably are missing, or that we can do to make those more livable communities, especially for those individuals who might be a little bit mobility challenged?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, kudos to Bismarck. They're the only network of age-friendly state and community in the entire state of North Dakota right now. They're one of over 1,000 communities across the country who have made a commitment as part of their planning and engagement process to ensure that older adults are included as part of that. You did that as part of your master plan update a number of years ago. I think that actually precedes even your role as mayor, right around that transition.
I think we finally adopted it when I had my first year in office, but it was already in the works.
So I think a couple of things when we think about livable communities, and this is kind of that third bucket. You earlier asked me about it, Social Security, fraud, livable communities. A couple of things. One is just recognizing that often folks think of aging as diminishment or decline or inability to participate. Not necessarily true. I know a lot of 80-year-olds who can probably outperform me on the number of things than I could. And so taking that into account and recognizing what are the needs, challenges, and opportunities. And what's interesting is the research bears this out. What those challenges are for older adults are often the challenges for young families. So let's use accessibility. That's the easiest one that you can point to physically.
And visibly see.
When you do bump outs, which are the things that people often get annoyed about, and I know our city snowplow drivers don't love them, but they're an important part of the community in terms of improving safety and accessibility and walkability. But when you build those bump outs, you're creating a shorter distance for individuals, citizens, to walk or get across the street. When you do that, you're not only helping an older adult who has mobility issues, you're also helping that young mother or father who's pushing a stroller and probably holding the hand of a toddler trying to get across that street and do that. And so making improvements to physical spaces that help walkability, accessibility, ensuring that folks can have access isn't just good for older adults. It is good for older adults, and it's really important for older adults, but it also helps oftentimes young families and others, and it improves safety. So I think looking at what are the measures to improve that walkability, that accessibility, those types of pieces. Housing is a huge challenge for everybody in the state of North Dakota right now, but particularly older adults. They're oftentimes relying on fixed incomes, and so as rents increase or as property taxes increase or as other costs increase and housing costs go up, they get squeezed as well. And so that's why we've worked on a number of things about, how can we were a part of the legislative discussions about ensuring that there's a strong property tax circuit breaker program. We were supportive of the new property tax credit, residential primary residence credit. Sorry, it took me a minute to get to it as part of it. But then we even go further, and this is where I'm proud of Bismarck to kind of come full circle from where we started this discussion about what are the policies at the community level that look at how we're developing and building communities, either new areas of town or redevelopment of town, and how are we making sure that we're putting in policies that are going to ensure that whether you're young, old, or in between, you have an opportunity to be there. And sometimes that means smaller lot sizes. Sometimes that means making sure that we allow for a mix of residential and business uses as part of it. Obviously, industrial is its own thing, and you've got to segment that out, but getting away from the 70s model of housing goes over here, all your services are over here, all of your medical needs are over here. That's not what folks want, and B, it's getting extremely costly for everybody, but especially older adults who often rely on fixed incomes to be able to maintain a lifestyle to support that.
Yeah, and our new land development code,
Yep.
Which will be adopted sometime in the next 6 months, maybe sooner, hopefully. certainly is going to address some of that spacing from a lot size standpoint,
Yeah.
and specifically even looking at some of that redevelopment in the
Yeah.
in the core of Bismarck, because those are probably smaller lots to begin with,
Yeah.
but some of those homes are in need of, or will be in need of, some kind of redevelopment.
Yeah.
But they also are close to our medical facilities,
That's right.
and frankly, it doesn't probably matter whether you were an aged individual or
Correct.
not. For some people, being close to those medical facilities with a home that is attainable to live in from a financial standpoint is true.
Well, and I think just to leverage that also, especially when you're talking about redevelopment, we've gotten really good about building single-family homes in large apartment complexes, and we've zoned out in part because of the incentives that were put in place. 70s, 80s, 90s, even some stuff I did on the city commission. Now I look back and go, what were we thinking when we did that? But we're incentivizing either single-family homes, large apartment complexes, and they're fine. Both are needed, to be clear. But there's a whole array of what we call missing middle housing, or housing types in between there, of duplexes, triplexes, quads, smaller units that can be owned, or rentals, could be both, that folks think of, and they don't have to look, out of place. And in fact, we've done this with your former city planner. He's now in Grand Forks, but and some of the planning folks. We did a walking tour with a consultant of ours and walked around with some developers and planners and interested folks in town and said, this all exists in the older parts of town. These are, you walk up and you think it's a single family home. Well, it's actually a duplex or a triplex.
Right.
And it's not just retrofitted homes. Some of them were built that way, but they were built to look and fit into the neighborhoods as well.
And certainly that is a big focus as we go forward with the 2045 plan.
Yep.
And with our new land development code.
Yeah.
And I believe now, part of it is changing the mentality for residents that, if we're going to try to create an attainable housing solution, we probably can't have 18,000 square foot lots.
Right.
All over the place. Doesn't mean that they don't exist someplace, but it is changing the mentality. I think construction costs for new construction is always going to be a stress, no matter probably what we're building. But if we can build on a smaller parcel of land, probably more row house type things, which we're starting to see some of those come in the redevelopment. So let's talk. There's other tax relief, property tax relief that individuals who have attained age 65 or thereabouts can also receive. So let's talk about those credits, because I think it's important everybody understand that. And then I'll remind everybody, apply for those.
You beat me to it. In fact, we have an effort right now where we're running some digital ads and have done some mail and email encouraging folks, if you're over the age of 65, you own your home, or you're a renter, and you have income below $70,000, you may be eligible for what's called the Homestead Property Tax Credit Program. So if you're a homeowner, you can get up to, I believe it's $2,000 in property tax relief available to you. This is in addition to or beyond the primary residence credit. You can qualify for both, and so I think it's really important folks know that. If you're a renter, so one thing I'm super proud of, we have a number of renters that are members of ours and that we heard loud and clear. Property tax relief is great. I'm a renter. What not? There's a renter's credit portion of that same program. It was $400 earlier this year. AARP made sure it went to $600 and then stayed in the final package. There were efforts to undo some of that, and we were ones leading the charge to increase that as well. And so you also may be eligible for the renter's credit portion of it. We don't have time, nor I think a whiteboard and the math skills to go through all of the complexity. I shouldn't say complexity, to kind of explain how it all works. But no, you can work with either your county auditor or the North Dakota Tax Department has the applications on their websites. And otherwise, call, reach out, apply. Because if you don't apply, you're definitely not eligible.
Right.
And oftentimes folks who don't think they're eligible find out submitting an application, I did qualify for this, and then get the relief.
And there's also some VA type related benefits similar to the homestead credit.
You didn't even there's also a disabled veterans credit as well. It works almost, it couple of minor nuances that are different than the homestead credit, but very similar.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure people know that. I know our city assessor's office will also
Sure.
Be of assistance to that, and I think it's important if you qualify for all the right things, you could own a home inside the city of Bismarck and pay no property tax.
That's 100% true. I know during the legislative session, I think between if you take advantage of the primary residence credit, and I've already signed up for that, which will be $1,600 this year, and you qualify for the homestead credit, I think you could have a home valued at up to $300,000. Now, your income has to be below that $70,000 threshold. And to be clear, below $40,000, you can get the full $2,000 relief. Between 40 and 70, there's a phasing period in terms of how much additional relief you get beyond the primary residence credit.
But even the $1,650 credit is going to
make a huge difference
for a $200,000 home valued home.
Yeah.
For individuals, I mean, it's going to make a big difference for everybody. But I think I was, as I talked to legislators, I was like, we need to focus on the segment of the population where they're really stressed.
Yep. And that's older adults, by the way.
Tends to be,
yes.
but there's also younger adults.
Yes, absolutely.
It's that lower mid-income, fixed income group of people.
Absolutely.
So what's your membership like? How many members do we have in North Dakota? How do people get involved?
Yeah, so AARP, as I said, is a membership organization. We have over 82,000 members across North Dakota, over 3 million across the, over 30 million across the country as part of it. One of the things we're really good at AARP is being that convener. And so while we are a membership-based organization, and we certainly encourage folks to join, our founder, Dr. Ethel Percy Andrus, said what we do for one, we do for all. And so we're not only doing things just for members, we're often working on things that we believe are good for all older adults and improving that. One of the things that we do a really good job at is talking to our members, making sure we understand what's on the minds of our members, and then helping them, especially in the advocacy space, know how they can help influence positive change. Adults age 50 and older are the largest voting block of individuals. I don't need to tell you, in an elected position, having been a happily retired politician, can tell you myself that voters are the ones who make the decisions about who sits in the seats that make the decisions, right? And so knowing that 50 plus voters are that largest voting block, we don't donate money to candidates. We don't endorse candidates. You know this. We've had discussions about this. But what we do is tell candidates, here's the issues that older adults care about. These are the folks going to the polls. We encourage you to talk about these issues and make sure folks know whether you're running for local office at the mayor level all the way to governor, U.S. Senate, statewide office, et cetera, and do a good job. We meet with every federal candidate during the election cycle that is running. We also have been making a concerted effort to meet and share information with local candidates. My background being in city government and just AARP understanding in general, you can often effectuate change very quickly at a local level.
Yeah. And not to dive into that, but I do think it's important people understand the local is really probably where a lot of things can happen that you're going to actually feel and see.
Well, a quick story about that, and I know we're going to run in short on time, and I tend to talk for a while, but when I ran for city commission, I had some friends who were like, why would you ever want to do that? They just were like, what were you thinking? Why would you want to be in that city role? 1 year later, those same friends and I, after I'd gotten elected, sat down and said, you've had more impact on my life, Josh, in the last year because of decisions made at the city commission level than I would have ever expected or felt. Some of them they didn't necessarily love, but many they were seeing it.
That's just what happens.
Yeah.
Can you give us some personal insights on what conceptually intergenerational collaboration is due to build a critically vibrant, strong community? Younger people, as we've talked about, many of the things that AARP is advocating for really does affect our younger population.
Absolutely.
And in many ways, maybe way more than the older, because it's helping them understand what they need to be prepared for as they attain that age.
Well, first things first, I think, is understanding, and hopefully I've given the concept of, yes, my job is to wake up every day and look through the lens of those 50 and older, But oftentimes we're looking at it in terms of not just those who are 50 and older, but who are going to be 50 and older. And what do we need to start bending policy, providing community education, promoting volunteerism amongst groups. And one of the things that, when we do events, very rarely, you don't have to be a member. Anybody can come. We've done events where we've had 16-year-olds and 80-year-olds at the same event, in creating some of those connections. Second is the work we do on Social Security really touches on this. We're worried about current beneficiaries and those approaching, but we're also worried about the next generation. 30% of North Dakotans that receive Social Security benefits would be in poverty without their Social Security benefits. That's likely going to continue into the future in terms of that foundational financial backing in retirement. Shouldn't be the only thing you rely on, to be clear, but it's important that we look at how are we making sure Social Security is not just there for today, but for the next generation as well. And then getting back to the livable communities work. Oftentimes when people think about building strong communities or whatnot, there tends to be a what's going to be great for the young and race for new and fun and energetic, and it's great. What they fail to realize is those same things that young professionals and young families want are the same things that older adults are looking at. Access to good health care, safe streets and communities, housing that's affordable and attainable, that allows them to be a part of the community and engage, access to healthy foods and recreational opportunities.
Yeah, I was going to say, the amenities piece
Yes,
is also very, very, very important,
Yep.
and the access to that.
Yep.
So.
And just as an aside, like I always tell folks, if you go, and there are many other examples of this in Bismarck and Mandan, but if you go to the Bismarck Street Fair, what do you see? You don't just see older adults or see younger adults.
No.
You see the community,
It's the community.
being a part of it, and from little kids to older adults, and that's the type of stuff that everybody wants to be a part of. That.
And even if I think if you get to get another step further, the younger generation or younger adults and kids, they want to know that mom and dad and grandma and grandpa are being cared for as well.
And that is the part of this as well, is often folks are providing care to keep their loved ones safe and independent at home. There are 140,000 caregivers in the state of North Dakota, over $1 billion in uncompensated care to ensure mom and dad can stay in age and place at home. And when they do need extra help, the first place they're often getting it is those family members or supports.
Yep. So what are some of the challenges or maybe opportunities, misconceptions that AARP is facing as you look to the future?
Yeah, I think I'll start with the misconception piece, which is aging isn't diminishment in decline. There are parts of it, obviously, but it is also opportunity, and an opportunity for folks to engage and do new. I think also the fact that aging has many faces. One individual who's age 65 isn't the same as the next individual who's age 65 or 64 or 70 or between. Yep. Just like one 40-year-old isn't the same as the next 40-year-old. And I know I've said it once, but I'm going to come back to that. You only get old if you're lucky line from my dear mentor Janice, because it's true.
Yeah.
And so what are we doing to build communities that do that? I think in terms of challenges, I think it's really pushing back against some of that, helping make sure we set up communities that do that. And then in terms of opportunities, I think there's a couple. Come volunteer with us, volunteer through your church. Get engaged in a community, be a part of that, giving back. If specifically, we have a very active speakers bureau, so if that's something you're interested in, you're welcome to come volunteer with us. We do a lot of volunteers, use a lot of volunteers in our advocacy work and other community outreach work as well. So I think we could do a whole nother show, Mayor, on future challenges and opportunities.
Well, I'm sure we could, and I think you stated it already. Just because you're 65 doesn't mean you're ready to retire.
That's right.
Necessarily, and in fact, I would argue that some of us that are approaching that time frame should be giving back to the rest of the community in many ways, in a volunteer capacity or a mentorship capacity, because you got wisdom.
Well, you just hit on it, and I want to just go back to your question about intergenerational. And when you do it, take your grandkid with you. Take your grandkids with you. I often tell folks, in my role at AARP, my mom taught me the best life lesson she could have ever taught me in preparation for this role that she didn't even know she taught me, which is she used to ask me to do things and I'd never do them. She realized very quickly if she told my grandma to ask me, it would be done in an instant.
Yeah.
And so I'll always tell folks when I'm in groups, if you have grandkids, you have more influence and more impact on them than you can ever imagine in terms of, yeah, that's mom or dad saying it, but if grandma asks or grandpa asks or whatnot, at least in my experiences, a lot of impact. Not that moms and dads don't as well, but yeah.
Well, Josh, thank you for joining me and sharing a whole bunch of information. And, people just know that AARP is out there trying to do a lot of good things for
Absolutely.
our communities as a whole. And it is really about making our communities a community.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's great to be back in front of a camera a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Bismarck Insights with Mayor Mike Schmitz. If you have specific topics or questions you'd like addressed in future episodes, email mschmitz@bismarcknd.gov. Or call the City of Bismarck at 701-355-1300. To learn more about the City of Bismarck, visit bismarcknd.gov or follow us on a variety of social media channels by searching BismarckND.gov. Bismarck Insights is a collaboration between Dakota Media Access and the City of Bismarck. You may find Bismarck Insights episodes on Government Access Channels 2 and 602, as well as on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV devices, on Radio Access 102.5 FM and on demand at freetv.org.